All right, welcome to class. This class will be going over pivot tables, what they're used for, how to create them, and going through and actually looking at what we can do with them. Okay, so first we're going to look at up here. I'm going to use the mouse to kind of show. So this is the original variable data. This is the data that you're going to get from like survey software or something along those lines. So maybe it's your accounting software, your finance software. QuickBooks pours out reports like this all the time. So when we do this, we have to notice three things, is that it's going to assign a number to certain things. So if you can see here, you have your race column, your age column, sex column, all this, and all of these numbers mean something, right? So basically what we have to do is figure out, well, does a number 1 equal male or female? And how do we change that over? So what we do is, we've all heard of the if clause before, right? An if statement. So when we're doing this, we go over here. So with this, we understand this is just your usual hours worked. This is our education year. This is using a VLOOKUP, okay? Basically all it's saying is for us to look over here to make sure where we're going with it, okay? So our L5 column, right? And then our age to education. If it's 2, then we're done. Then going on saying yes or no, is it false? Our yearly earnings, it's simple. We're just taking from right over here, okay? I'm just following the formula here. This is when we're going to get into our if statements, okay? Who can tell me what an if statement is? It's a conditional statement, right? So I'm saying if something equals something else, then that's what it becomes. So it's a conditional statement. So when we're looking at this one, it says if M5 equals 1, so where's M5, guys? It's right here, right? Then I'm going to label it white. Okay? If M5 equals 2, I'm going to say black. If M5 equals 3, Indian or Eskimo. If M5 equals 4, Asian, Polynesian. Okay? You can make an if statement as long as you need for however many variables there are. But remember on this one, guys, remember how we always do absolute versus non-absolute referencing? This is a non-absolute. Remember, Kalash? Why don't we use an absolute here?
Because it will, from one cell to other cell, it needs to check. That's
exactly, it needs to change, right? So that way, with this, since it's a conditional if statement, you see M5, all this, well, if I bump down to the next one, it goes to M6, and that's that drag and drop ability, remember? That we can just highlight on it with the little black, since we have this, but the little black cross, and drag it all the way down to the bottom, and I don't have to go through and enter in this if statement every time, or Control V. We can go down, so this if statement is going to go, okay? Now next, we're looking at the sex. Again, this is just another if statement. We're not going to get political here, but we're going to say there's male and female sexes here, okay? So just to make it simple. Again, you can add on as many as you want, detract as many as you want. But for the most part, we're going to say if N1 equals 1, you're a male. If N5 equals 2, female. If it's some random one, and that's called a variance in your data. So when there is a variance in your data, that's something you can report on. Say, hey, this person wasn't exactly following along, but with most of these, don't worry about it. Going through, using my mouse here, and I don't normally use that. So basically what we're saying is what our weekly earnings are, right? So if we're above this, then we're going to show it. If not, don't put anything. Okay? Everyone understand that if statement? State. Now, this is where it gets a little bit tricky, okay? Yeah.
So the weekly earnings, is it I?
Yes, it's the I column. So, and this is what we're going to, so remember how different these programs are going to kick it out, especially if you use, sorry, where we're showing it. This is the I column, and that's our gross weekly earnings, okay? So depending on the program that we're going to kick it out to, that's why we have to understand this. Because if you give your boss this in a pivot table, he's not going to like you very much, will he? He's going to be like, great, there's no labels, and what did I say? I mean, first day, we need to put labels on everything. Why do we put labels on everything? That way we know everything. We know what we're changing. So when you get this kicked out, that's why we're putting it in an order that we want to see this, right? So that's why I have my original variables and then the recorded variables over here. All right? So we're saying gross weekly, this is your age, this is your age, the average number of hours you've worked. I mean, you've got all these different variables that have this. It's our job to convert a pivot table or to convert a table into readable data, right? What's the whole point behind a pivot table?
Make it simple to get to the decision or something.
Exactly, to make it so that I can show why, right? That's what we want. We want to make it simple, easy. Great. I mean, I'm pronouncing your name right?
Nissan.
Nissan.
Yeah.
Okay, just making sure. I have horrible pronunciation sometimes. Too many languages going on. But that's what happens. We want to sit here. We want to be able to take each and every one of these and say, okay, convert it over into readable data. Now, with this, the first thing that I always do is I take my original variable columns. So, and I labeled this just for you guys. Normally I don't. So, these four up here, the top four that I just highlighted for those of you that are watching from home, the top four things I don't normally do. What I'll do is I'll do an original variable field and a recorded variable, but I won't label them. I'll just label these through here, and I'll show you why in a second, okay? So how about we just right-click on that, and we're going to delete them. And just the top four.
Okay.
Yeah.
How did you get this stat tools? I don't have this.
Hold on.
What? This?
Stat, no. That's a program I buy.
Okay.
I bought Stat. This comes as part of the Palisade Risk Management software. Sorry. Yes, I was showing a little bit of something before class. I'll cover this. How about we cover this at the end of class just so I can show you guys what it does. So for right now, we're just focusing up here. Stat Tools is an add-on program that I bought. We'll talk about it at the end of class. So how about we highlight those four, and then we can go ahead and just delete them, okay? So now what I want to do,
Why did you delete it?
just the top four.
The top
The recorded variables, original variables,
and the heading.
yep, and the date. Because normally I'm going to put those somewhere else in my sheet.
Top 4 means recorded variables and original.
Yep, give me 2 seconds.
And
Right
the
there.
data.
Yep. So just select.
Oh, this one.
Use this word. Okay. Now, and then I shift the cells up. So I'm just doing this side by side so I can show you guys what I'm doing. Now with this, I really don't want to have all of these in one. So what I'm going to do is copy my original or I'm going to cut them, and then I'm going to add a sheet, and I'm going to paste them. Okay? Now the reason is because these make sense to no one else, right? We want the original data in that sheet, but normally what I do them side by side and then cut the original variable out, put them on a sheet, because you remember all those if statements and everything I did?
Yeah.
They're all still there.
Yeah.
It follows it, because remember we didn't absolute reference it? And that's the reason why. We don't want to absolute reference it. We want it to go with it. So that we can see maybe, hey, maybe something's wrong with our data, right? So from here, this looks very calm, right? We can look through. I mean, who really wants to scroll through? I think I have 6,000 entries in this. Kailash, do you want to spend your entire day going through this? I mean, it would be horrible, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
You'd be all like, by the end of the day, you're going to look at so many numbers. And just like I said before, anytime that we're looking at numbers, your brain gets fuzzy. I mean, you can only look at Excel for so long. So we introduce something called a pivot table. Now, if you guys go to insert, which is right next to home, you see right there, there's a little thing that says pivot table, right? Now I can select anything in this data, right? And I'll say pivot table. Now, it knew exactly what to select because this is my data range, right? Everything in here, all of a sudden it understands, hey, you want to know what? I need to go from A1 over to H, and I need to go all the way down to the very bottom. That just, this is Microsoft being smart, knowing that a pivot table can be 6,367 entries times 8. So we're looking at 48,000 entries. That would have sucked to go down, I mean, it would have just been a horrible thing. So we look at that and we say, okay, what do we want to do with a pivot table? Now with pivot tables, you can either add them onto an existing workbook, or you can create a new sheet, or you can add them onto an existing sheet. I prefer, and everyone else will, to make your pivot tables go into separate sheets. Okay? The reason why is I don't want a whole bunch of mumbo jumbo on one sheet. I want to have clean looking models that we can all use, right? So we have this, boom, and okay. So now we have our first little bit of a pivot table, right? So what do you guys think this is going to be? I mean, it gives you a pretty good example if you look over here. Okay? What do filters do?
Groups then.
It takes one out, right?
Yeah.
Columns, just the same as a column. It's going to make a column. Rows, it's going to make a row. Value. So this comes into personal preference and knowing your boss, right? So I'm going to say I'm working for Kailash right now, right? Kailash, do you want it in rows or columns? You say rows, right? Okay. So we're going to do rows. Now I'm going to do yearly earnings. Actually, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do sex. Okay? Now from our previous if statement, guess what? It already knew there's only two. We have male or female, right? It already read the data. Great and easy. Now how about we say, well, Kailash is very worried about equal pay. He says, I want all of my company to be on equal pay. So we say, okay, what are the values? So then we drag the values down, and now I have how much the average male earns versus how much the average female earns. Now that, Kailash comes to me, he's all like, Ken, I know this is something we need. Now, if I was going to say, okay, Nisam, I have a problem here, man. Look at this. I don't know how to describe this. What's one way that could possibly use to describe this? Are we just not paying our female workers enough? And what would you say?
No. Yeah.
You would say we are paying them enough. What's your justification for that?
Actually, it depends because it's an average, and average doesn't mean anything. Maybe some extreme case may get more.
Maybe an extreme case. You know what? Sometimes the answer can be 10 times easier than that. So You know, right now I'm studying for the CFA. You're looking to take it, right? Which one of us is putting in more hours right now? And this isn't sexist in any way, but I'm just saying, which one of us is putting in more hours?
More?
More hours studying for the CFA.
You feel your exam is near.
Yes, because my exam is there. So then I'm going to say, okay, well then, how about I also do a value of usual hours worked?
But it is giving me.
Got it? Okay, yeah. So all we're doing now is we're taking the sum of all of them, right? Now what does this tell us about it?
Males are working much more than females.
Males are work, so that means that, you know, at first sight the data may look very skewed, but through this we can add in different things to say, okay, this is why this is what's going on. Now see, you can do this versus everything.
I think my pivot table thing disappeared. How to do that?
Hold on, I'll be right back.
Pivot table.
Did you exit out of it?
I didn't do the mistake. You exit. It's not there.
Yep. So you can just let's let Kailash get there real quick. Shouldn't take you too long. You there? Now the simple thing about this is it's drag and drop, so I can do this with anything. Okay? So when I'm looking at this, I say, okay, this is, you know, and this is just what we can do. You know, so now we're looking at the sum of yearly earnings, right? Well, let's go into education. What's the sum of the education for the females? What's the sum of the education for the males? Okay, so that's where we're starting to see. Now I come back to Kailash and I say, okay, Kailash, I figured it out. Nisam and me were like, all right, we've got this. We understand what's going on. So our female population at work isn't working quite as much. Their education is a little bit lower, so maybe they don't have MBAs or anything when we hire a lot of MBAs, and their yearly earnings reflect that due to the fact they don't have as much education, nor do they work as much as the male counterparts, right? So that's one way that we can do this. Now, the quick and simple way to get rid of all these, all I have to do is drag them up. Okay? So we can do this with anything that we want. So we can do a month in sample versus the usual weekly earnings and base that on sex. So we can see where males, females are working different amounts, getting paid different things as it goes on. Okay? We can also do it by state with usual hours worked and focus on sex, showing the difference there. That's how easy pivot tables. I mean, I know everyone makes them out to be this insane big thing, right? We just went through pivot tables in 30 minutes. And that's what you can do with pivot tables. That's honestly what they're used for. It's to take big things of data and create sums So that way you can see trends and you can answer questions very quickly. Any questions on pivot tables?
If we had to do it in the columns, then how would we do that?
Okay. So columns, all I do is, yep, you move it over there.
It's just column.
Yep.
Just in the column.
So, and you know, Kailash was running this business. Kailash wanted it in rows, we did it in rows. Columns, it's the same thing, it just moves it over. Okay? And that allows me to copy this data and say, okay, let's create a trend for it. Let's say, well, you know, this is why, because we're paying hourly, you're not working as many hours as the males. Okay, we can work on a compensatory package, or, you know, the education, whatever it is. That's where you find stuff like that. And I mean, that's a very hot topic in both sustainability and everything else.
And Ken, if we change something in the original data to sheet, if we add more rows, will this keep on getting updated by itself?
No, you have to create a new pivot table.
Okay.
So I should rephrase that. If you write the macro correctly, it will. It will continually pull. But that's where you go into a separate, basically I'd create a worksheet and I'd say just select the entire worksheet. So you can do that. That's more in the VBA, the virtual basic for applications world, but that's kind of where you're going with it. Okay?
Sometimes people tend to compare like on month basis.
Yep.
So for this month there are 6,000 whatever data. So next month we get around maybe 5,000 data. Can we use the same Excel file so that, for example, we would have analyzed so much with this and with graphs and everything? Maybe
So
with the change of just
yep.
the data sheet, will this automatically?
So what I would do here, if your boss wants it on a month-to-month basis, I would create your beginning month. So we'll call this January. I would create your beginning month in January, get it set up where you wanted it, and then assign all the graphs to all the things that you want. So create as many pivot tables that you want. You know, these are the 10 graphs that need to be auto-populated. And then I would just go back, and then you can just select that pivot table, and the graph will change accordingly. So you do one standard. So we'll call this the standard, right? I'm going to switch this, though, because I want... So when I look at... Actually, it might be better. So, you know, I want to select this. I've got the chart now, right? So next month when I reconfigure all of this in, so I'd set this up as a simple chart. So the next month when I pull it all back, it would be right there again. Because once you set up the pivot table to draw from that, you just switch your source around, it'll bring it into it. Okay?
And the numbers here will automatically update here.
Correct. Because remember, the pivot table, if it's showing that there's nothing in the other columns, it's going to say error, and it won't pull that data in.
Okay, so if it's a null, it will give me an error then.
Correct.
So that's why you replace it with the dot.
So rather than it saying error, it just says dot, and a dot just puts forward, it's a null. Don't make it a 0, make it null. A dot means null. Okay? So that means when it pulls it in, it doesn't affect the averages. So if it's not there, then dun, 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 dun. That's why I have it all set up to say if dot, because then that's null. That's not zero.
Dot is considered as null.
No, correct. It's just one of the things that Excel realizes. Okay, there might be a future value there, but right now nothing.
So during averages, it will not consider this.
Correct. It's saying that it's gone. So I'd set up a spreadsheet like this, use it as your master, and just every month take the incoming data, plug it in, and as you saw, we can switch. So they're on two separate sheets. Take that incoming data, paste it here in sheet 2, I think is where we have it. Paste it there. Then it automatically pulls over because remember, we wrote all these things really cool, so they're always going to pull in. Bada bing, bada boom. That's pivot tables. That'll be it. You guys will use it for your thesis maybe, but other than that, if you're going to be a consultant, I don't know where you guys are going. I know he wants to go finance. Honestly, I haven't used a pivot table once. But I mean, if you're doing a large volume of trades, maybe with multiple.
I think it will be useful, right?
It could be. I mean, consulting, it's going to be more about like products where they're sold, all this. So if you're looking at, who's our best salesman, like I talked about last time. So I have 3 salesmen right now, right? Which one of you guys is the best? Which one of you guys is going to get thrown out? I can take your entire last year's sales, put them in, figure out how many hours you worked, what your per hour ratio was, and figure out if you're worth keeping. Or whether, we should shut down some store. This store is doing 10% of our entire business, but it takes 40% of our workforce. Is that store worth keeping open? No. It's a simple matter of profit loss there. Yeah. So if you're going to get into that kind of consulting or HR consulting, these are what they're going to ask you for. Well, how many females do we have on staff? Okay. So we go back here, and get rid of all this. And as you can see, boom, pivot chart's still waiting. So I want to see sex. And boom. My employees by sex, by state. Showing that in no state there's a difference in.
This bar chart, it will automatically take over, is it? Whichever.
Yeah, that's what I set it up for. It's a pivot table chart. So those are when you set those up, so that way you can put in all the data and go forward with it.
So can you once again show me the graph with how to do it?
Yeah. So with this, I'm going to go to insert, recommended chart. Boom, there you go. And then you can go from here to select here. We don't want Illinois anymore. So now we only have, that kind of things. So you can go Illinois, right? Say OK. And we only want females. That gives us the total for each and every one of the females. Pretty cool, huh?
Yeah.
So, like when you guys are doing, you guys have a few big data projects. Use this, make cool graphs. You guys have your end of term paper coming up. Get a whole bunch of data, plug it in, do a pivot chart graph. You're good to go. Any more questions on pivot charts?
What is the function of the filter? We use REST 3, right?
Yep. So we can do a filter here where then we can just show the black, Asian Pacific Islander, Indian Eskimo. A filter just gives me something to put in. So that way I can actually filter out. And up here, if you look, it'll add this up at the top, the row in rows. So I can say what to do, or if we want to, we can say usual hours worked. Usual hours worked, let's go 40, so we're just on full time. And then we can say, okay, so this is our average hours worked. All that kind of stuff. Filters just, that's where you get down to the very specific data. So this gives us a broad overview. Okay, well then, how come this is this way? Well, these females aren't working as much.
Have you already taught them macros as well? Will you teach macros?
Because macros are fun.
Yeah.
So we'll learn some basic beginning macros
How
here.
do you bring this chart? I mean, the regular insert chart or something else?
Okay, so
Yeah, all you have to do is go to insert.
Yeah. The
In-
regular one.
Yep, just go to insert and chart. Okay. You guys want to learn a little bit more today, or you guys?
sure.
Okay, how about we learn forecasting, because that won't take too long. Because we'll use stat tool to do it. Okay? And that's the tool that you were asking about earlier.
Pivot table is done here, right?
Hmm?
Pivot table is done.
Pivot table is done. No one has any more questions, right? As long as you don't have any more questions.
It's a little bit load curve.
Yep. So this is actually something I was helping someone else with, though, right? So sometimes when people like Excel, I don't have this one.
Yeah.
This one you guys are just gonna watch. So that way you so I can explain it to you before. This is kind of, we have a solver problem out there. So we'll cover solver briefly at the end, and this is the next week. It's forecasting. Now forecasting is important for what? Pretty much every business underneath the sun, right? Kailash decides he doesn't want to be a consultant and open up a hotel. You want to forecast how many people are going to be in your hotel, right? You decide to open up a restaurant, right, Atri? Atri wants to open up a restaurant. You want to open up a Ford motorcycle or Ford motorsports dealership. You want to project how many you can get, right? So that way you order the right number of cars. You have the right amount of cleaning staff. You have the right amount of food, right? Forecasting is incredible. Now see with this, what we do is this is basically just adding a data set. Okay? So we're going to go here. I created a whole data set, right? That's how quick and easy it is. This is with Stat Tool. You can do the same thing with Excel. This is just something to make your life easier. And it's not that expensive. It's available. This is what you spend on beer a month. I mean, it's 50 to 60 euro for a student. And it's a wonderful thing because a lot of banks, they want you to know Oracle Crystal Ball. A lot of companies, if you walk in there with this, they love you for it. Okay? So we create a data set. Same way that you create a data set in Excel. Now what I want to do is I want to do a forecast. Oh man, that looks so crazy, right? So one, if you can see here, I added in the hour to the data set and I added in the load. Now we don't need to add in the hour in StatTools, okay? Because we've already know that this is once an hour load rate. Going up and down, up and down, up and down. Okay? So we know that we want to forecast the load.
This actually every 1 hour per day.
Yes.
Only data set for one particular.
So this is basically, I think this is a almost a year forecast. Let me check it out. Hold on. Almost a year, 3/4 of a year. Okay? So, actually more than that. Sorry, I miscalculated that.
65,000.
This is for an hour. This is 2,730 days. So 7.5 years. Okay, so this is where we're going to get into math, okay? I know you guys hate this, but it's simple algebra. So when we're doing a moving average, we're just going to take an average pretty much over the entire thing, and it's going to just move wherever we tell it to. With this one, I'm going to do it daily, so that means 24. Okay? So we're going to go through a moving average. The span is going to be 3. Do we want to do daily or weekly, guys? Weekly is probably going to take less time. So when we do this, we're going to do a moving average over 3 hours or 6 hours. What do you guys think is better?
6 hours.
6 hours. Why is 6 hours? 3 hours, we're not going to get as many. It's going to be a lot smoother. But, I mean, we're gone for 6 hours at a time, right? So we want to do a span of 6.
We say 6. We take 6 weeks or because we chose it and.
Hold on. I did something wrong. I didn't close it off right, guys. That's my bad. I didn't close this off right. That's my, sorry about that. Normally you should just be able to hit that, but I didn't close off the end values, so it kept going. So we're just gonna do this the manual way because I don't want to close it off early right now.
What's the maximum range? 60,000 rows.
32,000.
Oh.
32,000, and we were at 66.
We are at the maximum over the limit.
Yep. Normally you can just hit shift and scroll up, but with me, with my mouse, I don't trust myself. We said 6, right? This takes a little while, guys. And just so you know, this saves you so much time because otherwise you have to go plot this entire thing on a graph. And you guys remember getting your R values and all that. You have to go through Excel to do that. I'll teach you how to do that in the next class, but I don't want to do that today. Because this makes it, I mean, think if we were to graph this out, Excel has to graph it, and then we have to go through, take the graph, take the rise of the run of the graph, smooth it out by yourself, you know, saying average it out. It takes a long time, right? Especially with 9,000. Why not just do this, select it, and go? That's what a lot of these programs are, and especially if you're going to get into consulting, if you're going to get into finance. Hey, you want to see the volatility spread, right? When you look it over, you want to forecast. Hey, I want to forecast what volatility is. So if I can see that down here it's starting to rise like it was in 2008, 2009, I know that we're getting closer to a financial crisis, right? Because the more volatility there is, the more likelihood there is of a correction within the system, right? I mean, we were taught that from the very beginning. So when we're looking at things like that, that's what we're looking for. So, Kailash, right? For your restaurant that you want to start. I know I'm just saying you want to start a restaurant. But for that, okay, here's my restaurant that I want to start. Well, let's see the moving average for the entire thing. So, I've got everything that I need here, which is great, right? So I can sit there and I can tell my boss, and I'm like, all right, let's say I go to work for SW Pay, because this is for an electricity. I go through, and I'm like, okay, so here's what we're going to look at when we're looking at our absolute error, which is very small error, right? Because we have a big data set. We can go through and actually look to say, hey, this is an abnormality right in here. Was this a warm day? Or what was it? And then we can continue to go down and show where we're actually looking for. So when we're looking at week 1, week 2, you know, going through, whoop, all the way through. And basically what we're saying is that this is comparative. So this is what our original was. This is our comparative. This is what we're forecasting. So we're saying that down here is in weeks 22, 23, and 25. We're going to see a spike in usage. Well, why are we seeing a spike in usage? Maybe that's the first part of summer, right? Week 23, yeah, that's like May. So May, June, and July, the beginning of May, everyone gets really hot and they want to turn on their fans. Then you get used to the heat, right? That's when the power consumption goes down. So this is simple moving average. Okay?
It shows 52 weeks, is it? 52.
Yeah, we'll just say it's 52. It's fairly close. But if you look through, it will give you your forecast based on the previous data sets and the past data sets, as well as the likelihood for an error. Now, if we want to do this again, we do a time series and forecast. We do an exponential smoothing. Now, what exponential smoothing is you guys all know about a parabola, right? Kind of goes like that. We're trying to do that on this. We're using exponents to actually level off and to get a lower error ratio. So as we do that, we want to leave everything the same and run it again. Now, this is a lot of calculations. When you do this by hand, it sucks. Because you have to take each and every one, you're smoothing it out. You can only really do it for a small period by hand. With something like Stat Tools, I mean, you saw how quick all it was is getting the data, clicking it in, press go. Okay, while we're waiting on this.
Coded everything and
Yep. Do you have any questions on next week's problem? That I uploaded it. It's the Zyrtec copy. It's on the Dropbox. How about we all read through it, make sure you don't have any questions for me. If you guys have time, try to build it. You can send it to me. I will correct it. Or tell you where you need to look at it.
Is it a solver problem?
It is a solver problem. Okay. Now with solver, if you guys want to just look through the first video, I described solver very well in the first about 10 minutes. And we'll go over it today here after this gets done with this forecasting report, because the next problem is going to be forecasting. But I'll show you how to do it at the end of next week's lesson, okay? Without using stat tools.
So we need to look at the first elements of the solver.
Yep, that one will be solver. That one's not a pivot table. So solver, remember we're going to keep everything organized and ready to go. And then this is going to be a cash flow model, guys. This is a cash flow model. There's going to be 3 different options. So what do we do first with everything? As soon as this gets done creating the report, we'll go over and I'll show you guys, okay? Just so you guys are familiar with it. It's very close to the same oak product now. You guys can look at my models to see. I mean, that's why I've given it out. At the end of every class, I give it out. So you can see what's going on. But when we're looking at something like Zyrtec, we want to really push it over. You want to say, these are your choices. You want to get consulting. You want to get into finance. You're consulting finance. You're not really sure yet, but yeah. So this is a good problem for you guys. This company is coming and bringing you 3 different options. Back up with what you're saying with facts, right? If I can show them 3 diagrams, they'll be like, what does that mean? You know? Show them, this is the model, this is what our, because then you have your constraints, you have everything else. So, going through, as you can see, we're a lot closer with hardly any errors with the exponential smoothing, right? Exponential smoothing, basically we're just taking everything, making it a lot smoother, understanding the actual hills and valleys, because, you know, all data isn't linear, right? It goes like this. So we need to make our forecast go like that. But then you go through and you can see everything that's going on here. I mean, seeing this and this, they look pretty dang close to the same, don't they? I mean, you can hardly see any of the blue here. Because this one, the pink is the blue, or the pink is our forecast, the blue is behind. And you can hardly see, I mean, on my screen you can see it, this projector isn't the best, but you can see that. Let me open up Dropbox real quick. Okay. So,
Forecast is based on our previous experience.
yes, forecasting is. And I'll tie it in after we get done with Zyrtec. I'll tie it in after we get done with Zyrtec. The last part of next class is going to be about forecasting, okay? All those things that, you remember all the charts and everything, like the limits report, the sensitivity, all that, all those play into forecasting, okay? So, when we're looking into this, right? So this is how, I know Kailash has been here, but okay, with what we're talking about here, all these requirements are things that's all we have, right? So this is, if you're looking at Zyrtec copy, this is the paper, this is the pens, This is the ink, all of that stuff. The production units for there are the total number of copies. Okay? This is the amount of paper, or how much profit we're going to make, right? Now, what's the big thing about business? What do we want to do as business people?
Profit maximum.
Maximize profit. I'm going to get it through, like, one day you guys are just going to be all like, I want my money right now. So, this is going to be what we call our
Profit objective. Profit.
It's our objective, right? So if we go to data and into solver, we can see this. This is our set objective. All right? Our set objective is what we want to do. Now, what do we want to do with our set objective? Maximize it. Now, which cells are we going to change? Right? Okay, but we have constraints, and that's what these are. That's where solver, because solver will give you what you should do according to all of this.
What is that contribution margin? Production unit, I understand that produce this.
Yeah, this is the contribution margin,
And that is the profit.
and that's the profit which you get. So with this one,
Is it per unit or from total?
Per unit.
yeah, it's so this is the contribution margin per unit, total number. In this function, what we're using is called sum product. Right? You love sum product now? Sum product is fun. So sum product basically is it takes the sum of the, or the product of these two, and the product of these two, and adds them together. Because our contribution margin is 56 and 40. So in our first class, Ruth and Julia Ruth was the captain chair division leader. Julia was the mate chair division leader. So we only got 40 and we got 56, right? Well, how do I get total contribution margin? I have to multiply these together, right? Multiply these and add them together. That's what sum product does for us. Sum product says, okay, I'm going to use B2 and B3. I'm going to multiply those together, and C2 and C3, and I'm going to multiply those together, and then I'm going to add them together as a product, or the sum, and I'll get this right here. So when you're doing, and if you guys read through and really understand this, the next one is going to be super simple. Zyrtec copy is simpler than this one.
It could be 3 item, 4 item as I like.
Yep. I mean, the last one we had the red brand canners, we had 3 or 4. Three, yes. Because we had canned, whole, and paste. In the Daniels Car Company, we had 3 too. So.
3 more.
Yep. Bada bing, bada boom. Pretty quick and simple, huh, guys?
I mean, looks like it's the step forward. There is not anything maximize or nothing. Just multiply and addition. That's it.
No, because see what Solver's done for us?
Solver will do everything.
So, okay. Close your eyes real quick, okay? Okay. Do you remember the numbers?
No.
No, you can't help. I want to have a race with you, okay?
Yeah.
So at the beginning of this is all we had, right? Okay. I want you to tell me how many captain's chairs, how many mates chairs, what my profit will be on a maximized scale. All right. Are you ready, guys? Okay. Kalash, countdown. 3, 2, 1, we'll race. Done.
3 seconds, you get this.
Pretty cool, huh?
Yeah.
I mean, it takes a little while to set this up. But see, otherwise you have to sit there by hand and set this entire problem up. I mean, what did this take us? 30 minutes last time? It takes about 30 minutes to set up this model. It'll take you about 30 minutes to an hour to set up the next. Take you about 30 minutes to an hour to set up the next. But once you do that, look how much time I've saved. I've told Ruth and Julia how much they need to do to maximize their profit. Last time I told Daniel what type of car he should build. You know, and then we told Jim over at the canning factory how we should split up our profit. So, any more questions for today?